Chapter 3. How one went to the country and one went out of it. Time came when, in spite of all her zeal for others, Hope Palma found it necessary, or at all events was prevailed upon, to think first of herself. And yet, again, perhaps it was rather a possible other than herself that she considered when she allowed herself to be persuaded to renounce her work for a time and go away into the country with old Maria to look after her. She had contracted a touch of the low fever that prevailed in the poorer parts of the town and found a difficulty in throwing it off. For so long as she was in town, there was neither rest nor respite for her. There was always so much to be done, and no appeal ever reached her without meeting full and prompt response. So Palma, who had an equal, nay, surely, a double stake in the matter, put down his foot gently but firmly, and carried them both away from the strenuous life of the town to the restful quiet of a small estate he had close to Ackerman, where the Dniester flows wide and free into the Black Sea. He saw them comfortably settled in the house of his steward, stayed a few days with them, and thenceforward divided his time between Ackerman and Odessa. One day, when he came, he brought with him news, which it was useless attempting to withhold from Hope, since the matter was being talked of everywhere and had made itself felt throughout the empire. Sherbatsky, chief of police at Odessa, had been shot one night as he was driving home from his office, and was dead before they could get him into his house. The usual sweeping arrests followed, but wide as the net was cast, the actual perpetrator of the crime remained undiscovered. Whence rigorous enactments and much undeserved suffering. When Serge came down with the news, Hope's anxiety on account of her poor folk was painfully excited, and he could do but little to allay it. Some of them were undoubtedly in the net. Whether they would creep through the meshes remained to be seen. Vehement in her belief in the integrity of her people, Hope was for starting at once for the city, and it was all he could do to stop her. Old Maria sided with him energetically, however, and between them they prevailed upon her to remain quietly where she was, though greatly exercised in her mind and vicariously suffering much. Serge brought and sent her all the news that was going. Most of their poor folks were, one by one, in due course, and with extreme reluctance, released, as the police found it impossible, in spite of all their efforts, to bring the matter home to them. A new man reigned in Sherbatsky's place and took his own measures to avoid following in his steps, and matters seemed to quieten down again. So things went on for a time. Serge came regularly to Ackerman. Hope's health was decidedly improving, and her work in the city was not neglected, though Serge had deemed it wise, in the shadow of recent occurrences and present enactments, to confine it strictly to the relief of the needy, of whom, in consequence of the general upsetting, there was no lack. Then the end came swift and sudden, the end of Hope's quiet, resting time, the end of her peace of mind for many a day, well nigh, and but for the mercy of God, an end of Hope herself. For one day, when they were expecting him, Serge never came, nor any word from him. All Hope's dormant fears crept out of their hiding places and flapped about her, a tormenting crew, obscuring all her heaven. As the hours passed and still brought no word from Serge, they finally settled down upon her hopes like a crowd of carrion crows. It was all old Maria could do from hour to hour to keep her from setting out for the city. She was still in a somewhat tremulous state of health and looking forward with no little foreboding to that which lay before her. It was inevitable that her fears should carry her thoughts to the extremest possibilities of ill. "He is dead, Masha," she said with tragic finality. "Nay, dearie, we should surely have heard if that was so," said old Maria. "Maybe some business has kept him just as he was starting." "He would have sent us word. He is dead, or he would certainly have sent us some word." "Maybe he's had an accident. Things do happen to folks in the city. One's never safe there. Maybe they've taken him to the hospital," said Job's comforter, who hailed from the provinces. "I must go and see. We will go at once." "Nay, not today, dearie. or we might pass him on the road. He's maybe coming yet." "No, he is dead," said Hope gloomily. But old Maria's argument had weight with her, in spite of her own convictions, and she drearily allowed herself to be prevailed upon to wait till morning. Morning brought no relief to their anxieties, and they started at once for Odessa, and beyond, started at one black day's notice, on a quest that led beyond their wildest imaginings. When Hope and old Maria, pale and heavy-eyed from their night of sleepless anxiety, reached their home on the cliff overlooking Quarantine Harbor, they found it in possession of the police. As to the why and wherefore of so summary a proceeding, or the whereabouts of the master, no information whatever was vouchsafed them, nor could their utmost endeavors procure any. Palma had been arrested. That was all they learnt, but it was more than enough. Hope, forlorn and desolate, but driven to desperate daring by her fears, sought the new chief of police in his office. He flatly refused her any information whatever, and set his face like a flint against the pitiful appeal of hers. She sought light in her sudden overwhelming darkness among her husband's friends and acquaintances. But arrest under administrative process falls on the ordinary ties of friendship as sharp frost on flowers. Where even the suspicion of untrustworthiness is sufficient to land a man in Siberia, mere friendship affords but small salvage for the unfortunate who falls beneath the ban. It needs closer ties to stand the strain, and at times even these also fail him, and to all intents and purposes he is dead, yet lacking the rest and relief that death confers. While strength lasted her, Hope strove blindly with the powers of darkness. She wrote in desperate urgency to Paul Pavloff at Moscow, and got no reply. Then she failed suddenly, and old Maria carried her away, broken in spirit and feeble in body, to her own native village in Old Chersonese, and none too soon. There the old woman and her kin wrestled nobly with death for her, and by God's grace won the fight, she not caring one whit, and as fain to die as to live. But when the soft head of her baby boy lay at last against her feebly beating heart, new strength and the desire for life ran through her, and she woke again to all the sadness of living. Chapter 4. How one found himself in Hades. This brief record deals with human emotions, rather than with the too realistic detail of all the facts which excited them. Yet since every deliberate act in life is fruit or flower of seedling thought, the planting and growth of these is worthy of observance. It is the sum of the small that makes the large, and a single word may plant the seed, which in its time blossoms into fragrant action, and alters the courses of lives, and rounds life itself at last into its fullest beauty. We exercise our privilege, then, more fortunately than those chiefly concerned, and skip 12 dreary months, and pick up the threads once more inside one of the imperial sheepfolds, the great stockade of the Tomsk convict forwarding prison, 3,000 miles from St. Petersburg on the banks of Muddy Tom. And if you had happened to be sitting on the ground with your back against one of the wooden houses inside the great stockade that day, this is what you would have seen, just as Paul Pavloff saw it. Up above, a blue rain-washed sky with a clear sun struggling blessedly to warmth. All round, whichever way you looked, the sharp teeth of the high wooden stockade set in a savage snarl at the world in general, and biting viciously into the soft blue of the sky. Many long, rough log houses with grated windows and heavily padlocked doors. A wooden church with pointed spire. Black and white sentry boxes, every here and there, each with its imperial watchdog in the person of a green-coated Cossack who leaned stolidly on his bayoneted rifle, and in his dull, uninterested regard of his charges showed plainly that he considered them of a lower breed, even than himself. The ground was churned into mud with the restless tramping to and fro of droves of shaggy, unkempt prisoners in long gray overcoats and flat gray caps. They walked for the most part in silence, a silence that was fretted with the discordant jingling of leg fetters. The sound of chains in connection with one's fellows produces a natural repulsion in most minds, but Pavloff had grown used to it. He sat on the driest spot he had been able to find, with his back against the rough logs of the house, and watched his companions with interest, almost with enjoyment. To a starving dog, even a sour crust is treasure trove. When one has been hermetically sealed in a stone cell for many months, the generous freedom of the prison enclosure, its wonderful height from mud to sky, the great stretch that lay between its rows of grinning teeth, why it was resurrection, and contact with humanity and freedom of intercourse are things to be grateful for. For humanity, even in the dregs, debased, dirty, disgusting in its details at times, is still preferable to the automatic machinery in human form which attends to one's more pressing outward needs, but is deaf and blind and dumb to all else in the sepulchral silence of the stone bags of Schlüsselburg. A year of close confinement had wrought some changes in Pavloff, though not so great as might have been apparent in a softer-bred man. He was always lean and eager of face, and spare and tall. He looked taller and thinner, and perhaps a trifle leaner of face, and more cavernous about the deep-set eyes, and the careless sprawl of his limbs as he sat betokened a certain listlessness even in his novel enjoyment of observation. He lay watching all that went on around him with the quiet alertness of one deeply interested in his fellows and rejoicing once more in the exercise of faculties long barred. There was a thoughtful keenness in his scrutiny, as though he were endeavoring to weigh each man in his mind and to classify him according to his past. His aspect was that of the student come suddenly into possession of a library bearing specially on his own chosen study. Not far from him, a group of his fellow prisoners was intently wasting its meager substance by means of a couple of dice, which, for want of a box, they shook in their bald hands. One of them had chains on his wrists as well as on his feet. When his turn came, the rhythmic jingle of his fetters was like a ghostly chorus to his play. Their stakes were scraps of food and morsels of brick tea. A cheerful-looking little man, pushing a barrow, came along and stood near Pavloff to watch the gaming. He was past middle age and very uncouth and shaggy, but his face was the most cheerful Pavloff had yet seen. When he took off his flat cap, Pavloff saw that his head was shaved bare on one side, by which he knew that he was a penal colonist, and the odd little fellow took off his cap and ran his hand over his head every few minutes, as though he had not yet got used to that style of hair-cutting. Whenever he moved the barrow, to which he was attached with an iron chain, the wheel squeaked monotonously. "Eh," he said, with a knowing shake of the head at Pavloff. "It passes the time, but it's foolishness all the same, for if you lose, you starve." "Yes," nodded Pavloff. "The stakes are bigger than they look. Can't you stop that wheel of yours from squeaking so?" "No, Baron, I can't," said the odd little fellow with an evident desire to be obliging if he could. "I've given it all the fat I can spare, but it squeaks all the same. The dust and the mud have got into its throat, I expect. So now I eat the fat and let it squeak. You get used to it in time. It's rather a pleasant squeak, don't you think?" "I've not got used to it yet. How far have you brought it?" "Over 1,500 miles, Baron, from down Orenburg way." And the little old man sat down on his barrow, quite ready for a chat. "You must be pretty tired of it by this time." "Yes, and no, Baron. You can get used to anything in time, and I do believe I'd miss it now if they took it away. It's a bit in the way at nights sometimes, when I forget it's there, but I talk to it as we go along, and it always says, 'Yes, yes, yes,' to everything I say, and that's a change for the better anyway." "How's that?" asked Pavloff, amused at the old fellow's simple chatter and manner. "Well, you see, Baron, my wife, she used to say, 'No, no, no,' to everything I said, and she didn't always stop at that either. No, bless my soul, that she didn't. Now the little barrow never says no, no, no to me, and it never ups and knocks me down and sits on me." Here a small girl hugging a little slate blue cat came up, and leaned on the barrow and looked up at the little old man and lisped, "Won't you give us a ride, little father?" A ride, little Tushenka? Well, well, get in and I'll give you a ride. How's Pussy today? She doesn't like the mud, little father. And she climbed in, and the old fellow trudged away to an accompaniment of cheery squeaks from the barrow, jingling fetters, and jerky prattle from the little maid. Presently he was back, panting and more cheerful than ever, and the small girl climbed down, still hugging her cat, and said, "Thank you, little father," and ran off to a gloomy-faced man who stood waiting for her. "Ay," said the little old man, as he and Pavloff watched her grip the gloomy one's hand and go off with him. "His wife died 2 days ago, and that's all he's got left. Best off here, those who have no wives." "But you are married yourself, from what you were saying," said Pavloff. "I was, Baron. The little barrow is my wife now." And he patted the barrow with genuine affection. "And why did you marry the barrow?" "Well, it was this way. My other wife, you understand, she carried on with another man, and one day I hit him, and so I wear the barrow." "That seems pretty hard lines, just for hitting a man." "Oh, well, I don't know. You see, he died, Baron." "And your wife? Your other wife, I mean?" "She is at rest, Baron. God be thanked. And so am I." And he crossed himself devoutly. "We did not get on very well together, you see, because she always would have her own way, and she was bigger than me. Still, she was my wife, and I could not let another man have her. And so, well, she died too. And on the whole, I get on better with the barrow than I did with her. It does what I please and says yes, yes, yes to all I say. And my wife, she used to say, no, 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 and do as she pleased. And besides, I can sit on the barrow. It used to be the other way with my wife." "And how much farther have you got to take her?" "Another 2,000 miles, Baron, all the way to Kara." "And then?" "Why, you'll be quite sorry to part with her." "Oh, we don't part, Baron. I keep her as long as I live, they say. I hope she won't get laid up or crippled in any way. I'd never get to like another one as I do this one. Bless my soul, I never thought of that before. Whatever should I do?" And his cheerful little face grew overcast at the bare thought of it. "You're a very plucky fellow to bear your troubles so lightly," said Pavloff, distinctly cheered by contact with so brave a little soul in so odd a little body and circumstances. "Oh, I don't know, Baron. It's no good grumbling when you can't alter things. Besides, she's useful at times, like this to sit on. And she carries my pack, and sometimes one of the children, and now and again my neighbor's little dog. Now my other wife would never have done that, you know. She didn't like dogs, or children either." "What's that about my little dog, Gregory Stepanovich?" asked a tall, lean man who had strolled up and stood leaning against the house, watching the players and listening to the old fellow's chatter. "I'm telling the Baron he likes to ride in my barrow at times, Mr. Zuboff." "That he does, and to sleep in it too. I only wish it was big enough to hold us all. I slept on the floor last night because we were so crowded, and it was all wet mud, and it got into my bones." "Ah," said old Gregory with a chuckle. "I sat on my wife all night, alongside your little dog, Mr. Zuboff, and my bones are all right. But all the same, you don't rest your legs properly when you can't stretch them out." "And where are you bound for?" asked Pavloff of the newcomer. "Only to the provinces, Baron." "And why do you take the dog with you? Is he exiled too?" "He belonged to my little girl," said the lean man gloomily as he fondled the dog. "She and her mother would come with me, and they took the fever and died. It was just as well, perhaps, for the road is very terrible for women and children. And I couldn't leave him behind, you see. Besides..." And he nodded his long, melancholy face, knowingly. "Besides what?" Zuboff glanced round to see if the green-coated watchdog was within hearing, and then said cautiously, "I shall walk away from wherever they send me, one fine day, and Fifi will be company for me in the woods. He's as sharp as a needle, and it's good to have someone sensible to talk to when you're lonely. You hope to escape, then, said Pavloff with interest, since he too was bound for the provinces. Of course, anyone can escape from the provinces. It's just as easy as walking, but that doesn't say it's easy to get back home, you understand. That's quite another thing altogether, but I've no one left at home to go back to. When I get away into the woods, I shall just stop there. And supposing they catch you, said Pavloff. Why then, of course, we go to Kara with chains on our legs. All the same, said old Gregory, who had been listening open-mouthed to all that passed. You'll starve in the woods when the snow comes on. Oh no, I won't. I've thought of all that. Ah, well, one doesn't get out of Kara as easily as that, especially with the squeaky little wife tied to your legs. And he patted the barrow consolingly, as though to intimate that no slight was intended, and no umbrage must be taken at what was so evidently a fact. Out of Kara? I believe you. That's no easy job, though I've done it more than once, said another who had stopped alongside to see what was going on. He was a great burly fellow with leg irons on. His skin, where it was visible, was brown as parchment. His face was covered with a matted growth. He looked as strong as a cart horse. And let me tell you, he added, there are some worse places than Kara. Yakutsk, for instance. Grrr. And what is Yakutsk like? Been there? Asked Pavloff. Yes, Barin. I've been there and nearly stopped there. They call Kara hell, but Yakutsk is 100 times worse. That must be pretty bad, said Pavloff to draw him on. Bad? Well, you see, they're human at Kara, if they are a bit difficult and hard on you. But at Yakutsk, they're just simple barbarians. Eat raw and sleep cold. Beasts, just beasts, and not fit to live among. I'm rough and strong, and I can stand a good deal, but I can't stand the Yakuts. And why did they send you to Yakutsk? Well, it was this way, Barin. It was my first time, and I was going to the provinces, and there was a Barin in our company, just as it might be yourself, and he was bound for Kara. And, well, he was very keen to get back home again, and he got me to change names with him, so that he went to the provinces and I went to Kara. It turned out that he was a red-hot bad lot. He got back home all right enough, but then he was fool enough to get caught again, and then it all came out, and they found they had 2 of his name on their hands, so they sent us both to Yakutsk to make sure. We got away all right, though it's not easy, for the devils watch you like cats. And, well, it was bad on the road, and he died. No, if ever I'm sent back to Yakutsk, I'll die there sooner than try getting out. And why did they send you here, Mr. Zuboff? Asked Pavloff, of the lean man with the dog. I was a schoolmaster, he said bitterly, and I taught people how to live and grow, and so they plucked me up by the roots and cast me onto the dunghill, and here I am. I never wronged any man as far as I know. But they have killed my wife and child, and now I have nothing left but Fifi here. And we're going to live in the woods and care for nobody. I used to believe in God, but I can't fit him in with these doings. These are man's doings, said Pavloff quietly. Devils, Baron, said the man who was like a cart horse, very emphatically. The men are underneath, and the devils are all on top. As soon as a man gets an office, he becomes a devil. We're all just rats in a trap, said the schoolmaster, looking slowly round the great stockade, and sometimes I wish the trap would snap and chew us all up with its big black teeth. It's swallowed many 1,000, said the man who was like a cart horse, but it always spits them out again, to Kara and Nerchinsk and Yakutsk, and it'll go on swallowing as long as there are any left to swallow. Think not, Barin? At a sign of dissent from Pavloff. No, I think not. Sometime the end will come. Ah, God, that is too good to hope for, said the man who was like a cart horse.